Long before the name America ever graced a map, this vast continent was alive. It was a mosaic of diverse communities, each with its own rhythm, its own beliefs, its own way of seeing the world. The sprawling forests, the powerful rivers, the endless grasslands. This was a natural map, both gentle and fierce. People here lived in a delicate balance with nature, their lives woven from agriculture, hunting, and the vibrant threads of oral tradition. This land wasn't a nation, it was a living, breathing world with a slow, steady, and mysterious pulse. Then, from across the great ocean, shadows appeared on the horizon, large ships, inching closer to an unfamiliar shore. At first, it was about exploration, tentative negotiations, and a cautious exchange of goods and ideas between the newcomers and the indigenous peoples. But, with time, those ships carried more than just cargo and curiosity. They carried ambition, the ambition to settle, to build, and to forge a new society on this ancient land. This initial contact, sometimes peaceful, often tense, began to sow the seeds of irreversible change, to vastly different ways of life, to value systems, to opposing views on land, territory, and the future itself, began to collide. This collision laid the groundwork for conflicts that would echo through the centuries. As the first European settlements began to dot the coastline, they weren't a unified bloc. They were a jumble of different beliefs, origins, and philosophies. This diversity sparked a cascade of complex changes. Small coastal towns quickly blossomed into bustling trading hubs, pulling more and more people from the old world, all searching for new fortunes across the sea. And with that rapid growth came the big questions. Who would govern this new land? What laws would shape its communities? And whose interests would come first? These weren't simple questions, especially when different settlements were backed by competing European powers. The 17th and 18th centuries were a time of constant flux. Boundaries on the map were like lines drawn in sand, constantly shifting with the tides of power. Some regions saw cultural blending, while others simmered with tension over resources and control. Amidst this chaotic backdrop, something new began to form within the settler communities, a distinct identity. They slowly stopped seeing themselves as just Europeans living abroad. They were becoming people of this land, shaped by new environments, new relationships, and a completely new way of life. This profound shift in identity fueled a growing desire for self-rule, a yearning to build an order based on their own ideals. And when those ideals clashed with the interests of the distant powers that ruled them, conflict became inevitable. The 18th century was a whirlwind of dramatic change. Issues like taxation without representation, restrictive trade laws, and the fundamental right to self-governance became flashpoints of intense debate. A new generation of settlers, many born on this soil, began to ask a powerful question. Why should we be governed by a power thousands of miles away? This revolutionary idea spread like wildfire. It was whispered in taverns, debated in town squares, printed in newspapers, and proclaimed in fiery speeches. As the spirit of independence swelled, so did the talk of uniting the disparate settlements into a single, unified body, strong enough to stand against the mounting pressure from across the Atlantic. But every great change comes with a price. The powers across the ocean were not about to give up the immense economic and political benefits of their colonies, so tensions that had been simmering for decades began to boil over. Each side was convinced it was defending its legitimate rights, and this conviction made compromise nearly impossible. Then, history reached a tipping point. A series of events pushed the situation past the point of no return. The first major war on this land erupted, marking the start of a long and arduous journey to forge a new nation. This first war, the American Revolution, was more than just a fight for independence. It was the crucible in which a new nation was forged. Despite the immense loss and hardship, it cleared the path for the colonies to unite, to create their own government, write their own constitution, and chart their own destiny. The leaders of this new movement, though they often disagreed on the details, were driven by a shared vision, an independent nation founded on the principles of liberty, human rights, and self-government. But translating that grand ideal into a working reality was a monumental challenge. Even within the fledgling Union, fierce debates raged. What powers would the central government have? Who would make the laws? How would they balance the freedom of individual states with the need for national unity? Out of these heated arguments, a blueprint for a new system eventually emerged, a compass for the future. But this foundation was just the beginning. While the new government struggled to find its footing, vast stretches of the continent to the west remained untamed and unclaimed, and other foreign powers were watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. ready to expand their own influence. A nation had been born, but to survive, it had to grow. It had to expand its borders, protect its interests, and secure its future. This journey of expansion, stretching across the next centuries, would be defined by a series of new conflicts. These weren't necessarily born from a simple desire for aggression, but from the inevitable clashes over territory, resources, and national strategy. The growing pains inherent in the formation of any great nation, a new, uncertain, and tumultuous chapter of American history, was just beginning.